Is playing Maleknights possible in Arknights, Endfield? The short answer is, yes. Is it synergized? Well, only somewhat. In the sense that 3 of its members can all synchronize physical effects, yes. In terms of maximizing combo skills? Definitely not. But is it still fun? Extremely. Before we start, I'd like to preface that this is all content from the closed beta testing, and is still subject to change in the full release. Additionally, I'm not a very math-inclined channel, so these are going to be more theory-based than any actual calculation of multipliers. I apologize. Last but not least, I will not be comparing them to their rarity counterparts. This video is solely more of a commentary on how I played Maleknights in the Endfield beta testing, and the possible synergy in the team. Also, these are to the best of my knowledge, from my understanding of their skills. I hope I haven't misunderstood anything. If I have, you can let me know in the comments. Thanks. So, in the first place, playing a niche in Endfield is already pretty difficult, way more difficult than in Arknights. Obviously, they're completely different game types, and hence, Endfield requires a lot more out of team synergy and team composition than Arknights. Broadly speaking, there's 2 main types of damage in Endfield, similar to Arknights: physical damage and arts damage. Physical damage is straightforward. Arts damage currently consists of heat, electric, cryo, and nature. I've found a website that explains how these physical and arts status effects and skills trigger very well. I've linked it in the description if you want to take a look at it before continuing with the rest of the video. In summary, for both physical and arts statuses, you need to first apply a status, then a second status. The second status is what determines the status effect on the enemy is. Okay, let's look at our team. I must say, I'm already rather happy that it's even possible to form a 4-man all-male team compared to the technical test with only Fjall and Wulfgard. I miss Fjall too, everyone. Right away, you can see that we have 2 main physical units, Endministrator and Lifeng. This means that all their skills inflict only physical damage. We have Dopan, who's a nature unit, but all of his skills inflict physical damage and statuses except for his ultimate that deals nature damage. Last but not least, there's Wulfgard, a heat character. All of his skills deal heat damage, except his basic attacks that inflict physical damage. You can tell from a glance that Maleknights is completely deficient in any arts damage at all. There's only nature from Dopan's ultimate and combust from Wulfgard's. While ultimates regenerate at an okay rate, it's definitely not enough to consistently inflict it. It's almost impossible to consistently inflict any arts damage, which hinders Wulfgard a whole lot, almost rendering his kit useless. Firstly, his combo skill can never be called, since it triggers when an enemy suffers an arts infliction. There is unfortunately no way to trigger an arts infliction in Maleknights, as Wulfgard's ultimate gives an arts burst instead, double heat reaction, not something else plus heat. Secondly, his active skill is greatly hindered as we cannot fulfill the conditions to trigger the second half of it. If the target has an active arts reaction, he can fire a shot that deals massive heat damage. We wouldn't be getting this often, so he gets reduced to some heat DMG. Thirdly, his active skill also can't apply any heat inflict ions, probably a 4-star design choice as neither of the other 4*S arts operators apply arts inflict ions on their skills either. Therefore, he can't apply heat bursts nor inflict ions to enemies without another arts user to first inflict on an enemy, which we don't have in Maleknights. The only time where Wulfgard can apply arts damage is on his ultimate, where he deals heat damage and combust to enemies in an area. This ultimate is actually pretty powerful though, since after applying combust to enemies he can then use his active skill as it counts as an active arts reaction. His skill on max level deals an amazing amount of damage when the condition is triggered. Essentially, in Maleknights, he gets reduced to a raw damage dealer who can't trigger any of his art's reactions except on his ultimate. I gotta say though, my Wulfgard is surviving and doing well solely by pure merit of me having gotten and leveled his signature 6* weapon pretty high, letting him deal good DPS still and especially on crit hits. I still use his skill sometimes because it's more convenient for him as a ranged character, and he deals enough damage to finish off enemies even without arts. So, sadly for Wulfgard, but it's not the end for him. I'm hoping they'll continue to release more arts-based male characters in the future, after all. And of course, the fact that I promised to main him. In beta Maleknights, I also use Wulfgard a lot still purely because I personally prefer playing ranged units for easier dodging. The good part of having a lot of physical units, however, is that we get to stagger the enemy a lot more often, which deals good damage and crowd controls the enemy. Performing finishers, basic attacks, on a staggered enemy also has a cool animation. If you don't know what stagger is, it's a specific mechanic in Endfield, represented by the white bar underneath an enemy's HP bar. Most skills all deal some amount of stagger to enemies. When enemies are fully staggered, you can perform finishers on enemies. Now, let's move on to Endministrator. He's a versatile operator for physical damage, excellent combo skill that immobilizes enemies. Basic attack, nothing special. His active skill deals physical damage and knocks back the target. His ultimate deals massive physical damage and stagger. The most interesting part about him is his combo skill, which is relatively easier to trigger, when another operator's combo skill deals damage. In summary, he's got pretty solid output for physical damage, consistent stagger, and his crowd control is knockback. He has relatively less to talk about compared to the other operators, but I feel that it makes him more versatile. Next, let's talk about Lifeng. Lifeng's a very interesting physical 6-star. Basic attack is standard, but I like his battle skill a lot. Apart from the large physical damage it deals, it also deals knockdown. Note, this is different from Endmin's knockback. Most importantly, or interestingly, his skill applies a status called turbidity, which reduces enemies' physical resistance, perfect for this team. His combo skill complements the status perfectly. It activates when your controlled operator performs a final strike, the end of the basic attack, on an enemy which has turbidity. As such, this is our main combo skill in Maleknights, for reasons you'll see later. Last but definitely not least, Lifeng's ultimate, apart from having one of the most gorgeous combat animations, is just amazing in terms of damage and its general performance. First, he deals physical damage and knockdown in a very large area, then pulls all enemies towards the center this AoE. After a few seconds, all enemies in that AoE take another hit of physical damage and a second instance of knockdown. That's a lot of words, so let me briefly break down what the end result is. Lifeng creates a huge AoE area, meant to contain multiple enemies. The double instance of physical damage is usually enough to kill or almost kill most non-elite enemies, and the double knockdown ensures that Lifeng can apply knockdown all on his own, whether or not the enemies have been previously hit by another physical status. It's a powerful DPS ultimate, really good for crowd control, allows him to stand on his own. Combined with the turbidity mark that reduces physical resistance, it's no wonder how Lifeng is a powerful 6* unit even all on his own. Now, let's move on to Dopan. Dopan is a rather interesting unit. I don't control him often because I don't think I'm very good with longsword characters due to the slower ASPD. His basic attacks are normal, but let's get into his other skills. His active skill deals physical damage, and importantly, he applies lifted to the enemies. Let's talk about his combo skill now. It's unfortunately rather difficult for Maleknights to trigger it. Dopan's combo skill triggers when an already lifted or knocked down enemy is lifted. This is pretty difficult, as lifting or knocking down an enemy in the first place already needs 2 skill activations. So, in beta Maleknights, our only ways of triggering Dopan's combo skill would be either 1. Triggering 3 skills in a row, any physical skill, then Dopan or Lifeng to lift or knock down, then Dopan for the final lift, or 2. Lifeng's ultimate, which triggers knockdown on its own, then Dopan's skill. For now, with Endfield's current balance on skill points regeneration, it's quite impossible to do one with any team, as far as I'm aware, because of the slow regeneration rate. I do use the second method sometimes, but frankly I don't think it's a huge buff or a need. It just helps to deal additional damage to elite enemies that Lifeng's ultimate can't kill on its own. Last but not least, Dopan's ultimate forcibly lifts enemies even without a prior physical status, and deals nature damage to enemies and knockdown after the lift ends. Unfortunately, this nature damage does not inflict any nature status to trigger Wulfgard Arts burst, but it's a pretty big burst of damage. More importantly, it has great crowd control as well if you're low on HP. You can see, Maleknights is currently quite a physical status powerhouse. We have knockback from Endmini, knockdown from Lifeng, and lift from Dopan. My typical combination is to initiate with Lifeng's active skill, then while he's performing his skill, use Endministrator active skill to apply vulnerable before Lifeng finishes his knockdown. Lifeng's skill applies that turbidity status, so if the enemy isn't dead yet, performing a basic attack until the final strike lets him trigger his combo skill, which then triggers Endmini's combo skill. The other combos generally need ultimates, so I'll use them situationally, whenever I'm about to active an ultimate. For Arts or Wulfgard combinations, I'll need to activate his ultimate first, then follow up with his skill for additional heat damage. It's actually a pretty huge burst of damage when you manage to fulfill his skill trigger. For Dopan's combo skill, I'd make sure I have at least 1 bar of skill points before activating Lifeng's ultimate. Once he's halfway through the ultimate, well, I don't really time this perfectly, I just hit Dopan's skill when I see the ring. Therefore, once the enemies get knocked down, Dopan's skill forces lift on them, and then Dopan can activate his combo skill. I don't really use this one often, mainly because it needs a whole Lifeng ultimate, which actually regenerates quite fast because I use his skill often, but more because it's so niche that I don't always need it. The specific way to trigger it in Maleknights is just really funny. So, all in all, Wulfgard gets to be the lone wolf like he is in story, carrying himself and applying arts damages himself. Lifeng and Endmini act as 6* physical damage powerhouses, with Lifeng being a whole carry on his own that can debuff enemies for physical damage. Dopan is a good physical support to back them up. Overall, I'd say it's quite a viable team. I haven't really checked any guides for good teams, but I briefly tried a more lift-focused team with Chenkinu and General Arts Damage team for Wulfgard, and I don't think Maleknights falls short. Although I must say, I feel like Dopan's combo skill is way too hard to trigger, when a knockdown or lifted enemy is lifted again. It's near impossible to save up so many skill points. Ironically, I feel like Lifeng is pretty good for him, since his combo skill is already normally hard to trigger. Given that it's a choice up to players on whether to play physical teams, or arts teams, or a combination of them, I think that Maleknights doesn't particularly lose out. It's still way too early in game, not to mention, still in beta, for me to make a say on how they're treating Maleknights compared to the women. So far, pretty much every character fulfills their own niche and can't really be cross-compared to others. As long as Endfield gives us more men that can deal arts damage to help Wulfgard out, I'd be chill with that. Here at the end of the video, I've included a few clips of Wulfgard in an arts team to properly showcase his damage. since I think the other guys are having a pretty good showcase in Maleknights already. His damage on skill activation is a huge blast. You can see that once someone applies an art status to an enemy, he can trigger his combo skill immediately. Afterwards, or to other enemies with art statuses on them, he can activate his skill for another huge burst of damage. The heat status deals a lot of good dot as well, making Wulfgard quite the powerhouse. Thanks for watching this far. I hope you enjoyed this commentary video. Let me know what you thought of it, the editing, the clips, etc. Or just talk with me about your opinion on Endfield's men. Looking forward to the full release of Endfield, and hopefully our playable Fjall will return. I'll see you in the next video.